Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again, and I've got another build to present to you in full because I have been playing it for the past 4 or 5 days already. Yeah, it's pretty much ready to have all the content shown that I've done with it since I didn't really have time to make videos halfway through. In any case, this is the Crackling Lance cast on crit with Choir of the Storm Amulet on a Saboteur. So you have trigger bots that take care of all of your triggers, meaning you basically double the amount of stuff that you're spewing out there, except it's at a reduced damage rate. And we're trying to make Choir of the Storm, an amulet that pretty much no one was using, the focal point of the build. So what it does is it procs a lightning bolt, which you'll very rarely be able to see throughout this video, procs a lightning bolt on enemies that does a significant amount of damage and has a half a second cooldown. You won't really be able to see it because it's a very faint effect. It looks kind of like a Herald of Thunder, but even like a bit, smaller. So if you see those zaps coming from the sky on an enemy, that is the Choir of the Storm going off. Otherwise, the big fat fucking lasers taking up the entire screen, that is Crackling Lance of Disintegration coming from the trigger bots. So they are a bit lagged behind, as you can tell. They, don't really keep up super well, but they've got a decent bit of range. So the Crackling Lance most of the time still connects, but if it doesn't, it is Choir of the Storm doing some good damage and still killing things from range. I am using an impulsor in this build, so shock and a bit of prolif and explosions pretty much take care of clear regardless of if Crackling Lance is there or not, because the Choir of the Storm actually does hit really hard. It's probably about half of my damage at this point, I think, something like that, and it is probably going to be the biggest deliverer of shocks that my build has, even though I wanted Crackling Lance of Disintegration to do the biggest shocks because it has like plus 20% to max. It still can't really compete with the Choir of the Storm hits and procs. So you can kind of put any lightning spell into this setup and still have good success, but currently, as you can see, I've got the Crackling Lance taking care of a lot of the work, and then also I'm wearing a Svalin for just a ball lightning proc that is more there for extra Choir of the Storm procs and also for some survivability for the lucky block, and then also a life gain on hit Watcher's Eye. So I've got a lot of life gain on hit coming in. I've got some instant leech coming in, and the Choir of the Storm procs off of any attacks really, or any crits. So even the ball lightning that you can just stand around AFKing, ball lightning's going to fly out, crit stuff, and then Choir of the Storm will come in and do some really big hits. It's actually a pretty novel setup altogether. I've had a lot of fun on the character, putting it together and then also just playing it. It's kind of similar to the Inquisitor I played previously, but it's just built quite a bit differently. And the result is a little bit different, but it does have a similar sort of feel to it because of the Svalin, because of the Tempest Shield, the block memes, and the end result. I think this one has, I can't really remember everything about that previous character. I think this one has more damage, a bit less survivability, but this one's survivability is still pretty good, even though you might, look at the life pool and be like, oh shit, tiny life pool. It's not too bad. With low life and then petrified blood, we can take plenty of hits. We do have near block cap, I think, with Svalin, and near spell block cap, not quite, but coming close. And then our recovery is pretty damn good because of the life gain on hit Watchers, because of the instant leech. So yeah, it's a pretty decent character. I took it to level 96 in under 24 hours while already doing 17s. And some boss fights and stuff. So that is one of my faster characters to take to 95, and then one of the only characters I've taken to 96 in quite a while as well, because it's just so fun to map with. It's a very decent gold farming character once again. Seemingly have made a lot of nice gold farming characters this league, and it's taken over the role of gold farm for the time being. I've taken on a couple Ubers, so this is Uber Eater of Worlds. Decent enough playstyle, decent enough proc rates. You can be melee, you can be ranged. You do have some survivability. You rely largely on block, which 90% chance or so will keep you alive most of the time. You don't want to be in that 10%. And aside from that, yeah, it's not the best at uber damage because of the big damage reductions and the big boss life bars, your shock percent does not go quite maximum. So a good chunk of my damage does come in from having 65% shocks on everything, up to 85 sometimes with Crackling Lance. Against the Ubers, it doesn't quite happen, so it does feel quite a bit slower. Whereas on the regular bosses, you do blast them fairly quickly because they're not really held back by the shock chance. And as such, you just have a lot more damage. So the goal of the build is to basically hit 100% crit. We are using no hat technology for that, which is a Dance with the Death keystone, I think it is, from Brutal Restraint Timeless Jewel. So with no hat there, we have lucky crit and lucky damage, which serves two purposes: capping out my crit so that I'm pretty much critting all of the time, and also getting Choir of the Storm's damage to be much more reliable, because it's got a very big lightning range, as is classic for lightning skills. Something like, 1 to 10,000, I don't know. I haven't looked at it recently, but it's got a very big damage range, and rolling it twice with the lucky effect does serve quite a big purpose for its damage in that regard. This is Uber Elder, and it went fairly well until like halfway through. I clipped a few things and then died a couple times, but then finished it off all the same. So I've done a couple of Ubers on this character at this point. Haven't taken on many more, because I just don't have that many sets of things to do, and the DPS isn't quite what I would call uber comfortable, just uber doable. Whereas the mapping and the tier 17ing on this character has been supremely comfortable. And then, of course, the guardians and smaller bosses and stuff, and the feared, we take care of that all pretty well as well. So it is a pretty cool setup. It was actually, for me, one of the cooler and funner setups I've done this league, and in recent memories. It's been a big novelty to have the Crackling Lance happen, and also just the block and stuff like that. Of course, we can still die. Wanted to give an example of that. Yeah, the only other thing is I tried Arc as well. It's pretty much strictly superior for like clear in every way, especially for Simulacrum. Did 30 waves and then put in Arc for a couple of them, and it's so much better. No one fucking cares. Cool, shiny, fat lasers. So let me go ahead and show you how the character is built. And yeah, so here is the character, level 96, baited by Toxic 555, Proto 555, a guy in my Twitch chat, was basically going, oh shit, make something around Choir of the Storm, and here we are, making something around Choir of the Storm. So it has undergone some changes if you haven't looked at it recently. Bit of a different item to what it used to be, but it does trigger level 30 lightning bolt when you deal a critical strike. Now, if you look at the wiki for it, you'll see that it does a fuck ton of damage, like I said, of huge damage range, and then has a cooldown of 0.5 seconds. So you can lower that cooldown time with some cooldown recovery, which we get from Saboteur and a few other sources. And then in the end, we managed to basically proc it 3 times a second instead of 2 times a second. And it can trigger off of any of your crits, so as it says, when you deal a critical strike. And then our trigger bots, which are the little bros that follow us, take care of all of our triggers and essentially double that proc rate. So they'll proc 2 at once, and then 0.3 goes by. And yep, it means that instead of just like 2 a second conventionally, let's say with no CDR and just a regular character, we get up to like 6 of these procs a second, and it can mean pretty big damage. So we're built largely around that, but then of course we want to do some cast on critting as well. So Lancing Steel of Spraying, it's what I ended up falling into. So the original concept for the build, for what it's worth, was to go, I don't know if I've even got, yeah, this was to go Battle Mage with a claw, to use the new rune craft of Battle Mage. And then use something else like Spectral Throat. And that's how I leveled, and that's how I played the game up until, I don't know, level 80, something like that. And it was working out fine. It's just that it was really tough to justify this Battle Mage situation, because it wasn't providing that much damage for my skills, like, for Crackling Lance and for Lightning Bolt, because in the end, if I just crafted a good spell damage with some crit and good proc rate sort of sword, I'd get a similar amount of damage, but even better. And then we'd also have hits can't be evaded. And then we could also use Lancing Steel of Spraying, which is basically the absolute gold standard in proc rate for casts on crit. You can be pretty ranged. The attack speed doesn't feel too bad. It takes care of all your like pierce and your extra proj, so you really can't beat it. And Spectral Throw was definitely a bit slower than that, thanks to needing an extra proj, thanks to needing a bunch more attack speed. And even Cyclone does pale in comparison to this, because while it might proc pretty well, you have to get into melee range before it starts working, and yeah, it's just too good. So we started going this route, and then I just crafted a foil that's very basic, that you use woe essences until you hit some good suffixes, and then, you know, hits can't be evaded. And you can get an additional runecraft of a bit more spell damage, and thusly we're pretty much revolved entirely around our lightning damage and just having a big damage range. So as you can see, my hat is red, and that means it's not working. It's because of the Dance with Death keystone. Can't use helmets. You can still put a hat on, just, I don't know, for fucking reasons. But then it gets redded out. Critical strike chance is lucky. Damage with crits is lucky. Enemies damage crits against you is lucky. So if you're softcore and don't mind taking lots of portals, there's no downside to that. But if you do want to live a bit longer, you have to make sure you have a bit of, you know, crit protection. So I did end up going and Impulsor in this build because I wanted to make sure clear was going to be pretty smooth with Crackling Lance. The Impulsor has 50 damage reduction from crits. I think by default there's things like, I don't know, 1 Divine for a really nice roll. And then also I did spec into reduced crit there. So I've got like 20% damage taken from crits. Not a big deal considering, you know, this thing's not a big deal considering we've mitigated most of the crit damage that comes in. So that's the core concept of the build. I wanted to do Crackling Lance of Disintegration just because the lasers are really cool. But like I said, you can do Arc, you can do Shock Nova. Several different things that, you know, might be a bit different. Arc is pretty much going to be the best for clear. If you really want just a huge clear speed and clear effectiveness character, you can do that. But I wanted it to be a little bit different and special, so we've gone with this route. We are, of course, using a Svalin, same one as my other character was using, which has a bunch of block, and then that means that you have to try and get your block up, and it is really tough to do from the position we are in. As a trickster, you know, if we really, not a trickster, sorry, Saboteur as a shadow, if we really wanted to, you know, we could travel all the way down here and get to the really good block stuff, but I wanted to go up this way to get pain attunement, and also ended up just running 2 clusters. The 2 clusters are the main reason I can get block, and that's because of Megalomaniacs. So I wanted to grab one with the shields, which aren't too, you know, crazy by themselves, but combined with other block nodes on Megalomaniacs can get pretty expensive. The whole idea is just extra attack block and then recover life when you block. So in the end, I actually have, I think 150 life when blocked because of one with shield, which is where a good chunk of our autopilot sustain is coming from. This one has rote reinforcement as well. This one's just for a bunch more generic block and some more spell block, so nothing crazy on this one at all. And then down here, another one with shield with Sadist. So Sadist is the biggest damage we can generate from, you know, large or medium or small clusters, and that's why I went with a bunch of those. Yeah, everything else is just trying to fill out my block. We have a second curse because we use Assassin Mark and Conductivity, which I just self-cast sometimes, not too often. We do have our Brutal Restraint, which is trying to give us some crit and some aura effect, because I'm using several good auras. So this build does currently utilize Wrath and Zealotry for big damage. Vitality gives us life gain on hit and a bit of life regen on our life as well. And then damage penetrates with Wrath. I did have a Zealotry crit, but for the most part I filled out my crit instead. Just got rid of that and grabbed a Wrath penetration. And then on my life I'm currently reserving Tempest Shield and Vitality and still being low life. We have otherwise Whirling Blades with faster attacks. We've got a Zealotry over here, Assassin Mark, Frostblink, Conductivity, Mark on hit. Until your mana is solved, you might want to do Life Tap with Assassin Mark. It does cost quite a bit more, but in the end, the goal is to eliminate that and have mana cost be completely solved with the use of rings. So that's minus mana cost as a Elrion, you know, base there, and also minus mana that we crafted ourselves, both with catalysts, and then also I'm getting leech here. So we got mana on hit, we got attack leech, which with a woke added lightning does actually come in kind of clutch with lancing steel, and then also instant leech. This combined with these is how I've solved mana entirely, and pretty much whenever I attack I should be sustaining mana from my Crackling Lance. It can get a little iffy though, so until you're at that point, be careful. This ring was just one that had life and the Elrond thing, and I bought that and then did prefixes cannot be changed, and then re-rolled a chaos harvest. So that's how it looked, and then we made it ourselves to just give a bunch of chaos res because I needed to get it somewhere. And then if you can get it to 10 as the Elrond thing, another 20% gives it to -12. So this one here takes care of a lot, and then this takes care of a lot of our resists. I did end up going over the top with my resists, so I'm a bit overcapped, which is good news, means that the gear isn't quite as difficult to put together. We got Shock Prolif here, so that Impulsive does better as an implicit here, and then also Lightning Exposure. Otherwise, they're gloves that I think I recombinated. No, I tried to recombinate. These were just one divine, a bunch of strength and some stuff, and then spare prefix. This thing I made myself with, I don't know, I think life rerolls, maybe. Life rerolls on harvest, just for some cooldown recovery rate. Pretty good belt result in the end, so you're looking for something like that. Otherwise, put some CDR as an implicit here, and then just life movement speed, and that's all of the gear. So my Svalin, instead of it doing lots of damage like I tried to do on my previous character, this one is just more utility. So the ball lightning shoots out, it's slower proj, it'll trigger leech and life on hit, and then also trigger some of these even when I'm not actually attacking. And then we have a petrified blood. It's been doing whatever it can. And that's the setup. That is the setup. If you like what you saw, that's how it looked. And it's not super hard to put together, but it does take a little bit of work for the right gear. For the Ascendancies, the first thing I did was grab trigger bots, and then went into cooldown recovery, and then the extra area damage. And I should also mention the Lightning Bolt is an area effect, so it does get benefit from things like that. And then also Explosives Expert. You can become way tankier if you want instead with Born in the Shadows, which will, just blind everything and mean that they deal less damage to you. I wasn't having too many problems with my survivability, so I figured I'd just go more damage. You could also steal some stuff from Assassin, from Trickster. You could also go on Assassin or a Trickster and then steal Trigger Bots if you just want more Trigger Bot action. I think it's a pretty flexible setup. And then lastly, the MTX, if you're wondering, is the Karui Elimancer stuff, supporter pack with a Revenant and then also Stygian. And I do kind of like this setup a lot with the Wrath aura effect. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the character. I absolutely love this one. Maybe my second favorite character of the league compared to Mamba. So it's been a lot of fun. Thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time.